This is the quest within.
All right, welcome to the quest within. I'm Theology. Nathan is sitting this one out again. But here in the studio with me, I've got my good friend Pierce.
Yo, what up? Yeah. It's Pierce, Ludo Loon Studio, he, him.
I'm very, very, very happy you're here. I can't wait to get into this discussion. So you essentially analyzed chapter 5 of my book better than I wrote it, I think. And so we're going to get into your thoughts on it. And you were just reading through your notes, and I'm just like in awe of like the expose of it. So, I mean, yeah, like where do you want to start, bro?
Yeah, so just to kind of give some backstory. So like for folks who are listening, let's maybe just give a brief overview of, so it's in your book.
Yeah.
Basically what, I forget the exact title, but it's about video games and mental health.
Yeah.
And so chapter 5 kind of deals with these concepts of like greed and exploitation. So
right.
It was really interesting, and I think like it's a timely subject just with like the way the world is, right? Like,
yeah.
So I wanted to dive in a little bit more about like what we can learn about exploitation, greed, power, and then also getting a little bit into like solidarity and, the way that we can kind of analyze some of that through gaming. And then also there's this question of like, how do we, change systems, right?
Yeah.
Where like,
that's what I'm most excited to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, okay, a quick overview of that chapter. So it's about a character in a game called Persona 5 Royal. This character's name is Yusuke Kitagawa. He is the artist of the game. And he comes off with a very creepy vibe at first, but then you actually get to know him and you see that his intentions are pure, and he became one of my favorite characters very quickly. But long story short, he was living with a person named Madarame, who was sort of his mentor and art teacher. But you find out in the game that Madarame has been exploiting Yusuke and all of the students that live in Yusuke's house because he would take in like troubled youth. He was exploiting them for their art and profiting off of it. And yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful portion of the Persona 5 story. And it got me really thinking about exploitation, not only in this game, obviously, but in the real world, right? Because we live in a capitalist society. And so exploitation needs to happen under the current system. There's going to be winners and losers, and there's going to be people who are on top and people who are on the bottom.
Yeah, and I think the way that you said that it like needs to happen, quote unquote, like I think it's important to recognize that this is a process that is like baked into just like the economic reality of like you can't really escape that exploitation, right? So like I think when we talk about exploitation, it's good to kind of like come up with a definition, right, in terms of just so we're on the same page. Because I think in popular culture, there's like this idea of, oh, like if you work in really bad conditions, like that's exploitation. But if you do what you love, like for us as musicians, like, you can escape it somehow. And that's not really the case.
True.
Like basically the fundamental reality of not even just like our economic system, but like class society, where you have people who have and people who like need to work for those who like have that, right? Like
so they can have more.
Right. Well, like the main difference between like the past and now is like in the past, like if a king is exploiting whatever serfs and like this whole system of like lords and whatever, like at the end of the day, the exploitation has a limit as to like what could the royalty consume, right? And so it's like today it's different because we're not really like when we go make things, it's like you don't there's like this disconnect between actual need and what makes money, right? And so like under capitalism, like exploitation is largely concerned with what can I do to make money And this idea of whether or not it's actually useful to someone is kind of this secondary consideration. So like in the book, talking about how Madarame Madarame, sorry. I haven't heard these names. I've only like read them.
I know
so
they're all in Japanese, so I don't blame you.
yeah, yeah. But it's like there's like the broader society that they're operating in like doesn't really care, that they don't know that these people are being exploited in the same way, that we don't really have a firsthand view of some of the horrors of how like, you know, whatever, right? The stuff in our lives, the like material goods, like how it got to us. And so it's kind of like basically I think that is like the fundamental starting point, is understanding the way that, you know, what is exploitation, and like how does that like create the rest of like the world that we're in, basically.
Yeah, and I even write in my book that, you know, I'm technically a hypocrite because I'm writing this book on a computer that, you know, the materials in it were probably sourced from some really messed up place in the world, and I can't even like fathom that kind of exploitation. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
And it really sucks because like, where does it end? Where do we draw the line?
Right.
That's a question I ask in my book, and I literally say like, you know, I want to have a discussion about it.
That's why I reached out.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
this so much. We're like actually making a whole podcast about it. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think so like I want to be careful not to like focus on kind of this like guilt that comes with like the, you know, like that we have to use these products that are because like we ourselves are also like in this process of needing to make money. Like you don't really have a choice, so it's like, I mean, there's like there's like you can choose where you go to work to a certain extent, and you can like make these different choices. But like at the end of the day, I think understanding that it's baked into our economic reality is like an important thing to understand, because I think like, so for us as musicians, going back to that, there's in the music scene, there's like this idea that if you become a musician and you like make it big, like you're like gonna be free from all these worldly problems, right? Of like, ooh, you get to do your dream jobs. Shouldn't you be so happy? When like really it's a very small percentage of people who actually get to like live this lavish whatever rock star lifestyle that like gets sold as a way to have musicians do. Just like, I mean, I've put so much work into my music, and like I guess the reward that I've gotten out of it has not been financial. Like it's, you know,
been more internal.
Well, and like the people I meet, like such as yourself, in the community around, like especially in video game music. So I think there's a lot of like good things that come with making music.
Yes.
I just think that like it can be easy to fall into this trap if you're not aware of it, of just this dream of like, oh, if I get to make music doing what I love, when actually like there's been times when I've like forced myself to like, oh, I've really got to like make this music, and I just become so much more miserable for it. I don't know if you've probably had similar experiences.
Well, even this week, so like I stacked up a few bucks so that I could take like a week or two off and just be in the studio, and I'm living in that right now. But I will tell you what, Pierce, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be in the studio the whole time. I had to go out and do some Uber rides because I was like, I just need a break. I can't do this for 8 hours straight. So yeah, I totally get it. It comes with its own set of challenges, to be honest.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's like and it takes like you need this discipline to like exploit yourself in the process, which is kind of like the tricky part of being like, you know, quote unquote, whatever, middle class, I guess if you want to think, but like being someone who is in this position where it's like, oh, well, I get to be my own boss, but that also means you have to exploit yourself, right?
Really.
Yeah.
And I do it all the time because I'm constantly on the go. I'm constantly moving. My schedule fills up like that. Like it's stupid. Like I think in the past 3 days, I've had 12 people ask me to do something. It's a lot, man. You know, and I'm penciling it all in and trying to manage it as best as I can. But Yeah, at the end of the day, I literally have to pencil in time for myself or I don't get it. And that is literally exploiting myself because like yeah,
Right,
I
right.
don't know how to manage it, man. And like I said, it creates this whole new like set of problems that I've never had to deal with in my life before. And no one writes a manual on this shit.
No, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's kind of personal too, right? Like there's a later part where you talk about like meditation and understanding your own goals, and I'll get into that more in the like greed section in terms of how not doing that can, basically whatever. We'll get into
Yeah,
that.
we will. We will.
But I think so. You mentioned a certain company. I don't know if you how you want to approach this.
Yeah, we can say Bowblocks. It's fine.
Blocks.
Yeah. I think people know
So
what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
here's the deal, like that was just an article I regurgitated from More Perfect Union. So if you want to sue anybody, you can sue them. I'm just the messenger. But yeah, Bowblocks. I think we know what that is.
right. And so that to me also harkens to like back in the day when there was company towns with script, right?
Yeah, dude.
And like you can kind of see the rich trying to recreate that with like all these
I know,
cryptocurrencies
right?
and like basically just hyper exploitation and like it's this similar situation where passion gets hyper exploited where like kids are well I mean let's just say in my notes I have there's a reason we have child labor laws
Yeah.
because kids cannot like quite even adults obviously have trouble with this but like especially kids are impressionable and it's like when you just see oh here's this fun thing I just want to play this game but when you like gamify it in a way that like you don't understand how you're being exploited to make this company just like super rich
Yeah.
and
It's
just like
ridiculous, man.
just working crazy hours for like fake coins that are barely worth
It's
anything.
wild. Well, you could make the argument too that it's like, oh, well, they're playing a game, they're doing something they love. But bro, like I'm also, like I said earlier, doing stuff I love. I'm in the studio, right?
Hmm.
But I can't like fully do that for 8 hours straight, right? So it doesn't matter if you're doing something that you love, the ability to be exploited is still there.
Right. And
know?
it's like you have to be aware of your own needs. And obviously when you have that like blinding passion, it can be easy to kind of forego that. And so
For sure.
yeah, I think just one more thing that I wanted to get back into is Madarame and like the way that he would like because there's like a part of like ideology like the way we conceive of the exploitation that we go through kind of like papers over some of those like you know if you were just doing this for like some menial job whatever it's like there's really no like oh wow you're so cool you're right it's just like you feel like shit doing it
Yeah.
and it's like there's not but like the way that Madarame kind of like hides this basically like the history of like this painting I don't know if you want to kind of like get into that a little bit more in terms of just like what you described in the book I haven't played the game.
Yeah, no, it's okay, man. And I've only played like part of the game, but I did play this whole chapter, obviously. It's why I wrote about it. Okay, so basically there's this painting called the Sayuri, which is the painting that Madarame stole. And it was from Yusuke. So in the painting, it's Yusuke's mom, actually. And Yusuke didn't know this until they went into like the metaverse and into Madarame's palace, which that's a whole nother Persona 5 tactic. Basically, you go into like these corrupt people's like palaces, which basically means you just infiltrate their heads. I don't know. You steal the treasure and then they confess their crimes in real life, right? So when you are inside of Madarame's palace, you notice that the Sayuri has a baby, and the baby is Yusuke. And it's like it's just this mind-blowing thing of like, oh my gosh, like he did that, and it all was revealed when you're in the palace, like he stole this for his own profit. It's just freaking wild because that painting, in the lore of Persona 5, you find out that it's like a very popular painting and a lot of people know about it, right?
Yeah, and I thought that was just really interesting because it just kind of reminds me of the way that in the real world, like there's this kind of false leadership of people who will claim, like our own collective history or like erase it or like repurpose it so that it's less critical of the way things are, so that you kind of don't draw the dots of like, oh, that um like the way that I think there's a few things going on. So like
Yeah, sure.
basically, like we don't get taught some of our history, and sometimes
That is so true.
like people died for the weekend, and like we're actively seeing like certain history get scrubbed off of government websites about like, especially people from diverse backgrounds who historically were oppressed to kind of,
It's so messed up to watch it be erased in real time
yeah,
and
and
to
I
be able to do nothing about it. I hate that.
right, and they're like, maybe we can't do anything about the website that the government itself hosts, but obviously we can pass these stories on and like point it out in our own
Right, of course.
conversations like we're doing now.
Exactly.
But it is frustrating, right? Because like you see it happening, and kind of like with Madarame,
Yeah.
you don't, like, if you don't have that background, like your own history can be rewritten. And I think one of the things that also Yusuke, is that it?
Yusuke. Yeah.
Yusuke, yes. He has a really difficult time like refusing to believe he's been duped,
Yeah.
because it is so hard. I think, and that's like something that I notice with my own parents regarding this current world we live in.
Yep.
That
Same here, my friend.
and it's like when the screens tell you one thing and reality is different, it's hard to reconcile that.
Seriously, especially if it's like, I mean, this is called the sunken cost fallacy. Basically, like I've sunk so much into this. It's like the Nigerian print scam. It's like I've given so much money, I can't give up now. My payday's just around the corner.
Right.
But in reality, it's not. You're being duped.
Right. And even less serious, I mean, it can be easy to just fall into, like, oh, well, I believe this thing and it's got to be true. And it can be hard to reconcile and like have a level of skepticism of even your own ideas of like, is this actually true?
Yeah.
Like, what proof am I seeing that this is, whatever. Anyway, not to get too into that. I think basically that kind of leads into the next subject though of greed, right? And so greed is this attitude. So Madarame does not have to lie to these kids, right? Like there is a different world where he could choose, oh, I'm gonna like help these kids get it together and like figure out what is the way that they can enjoy a little bit more of the fruits of their labor. And like it's this, basically greed is an attitude, and like sometimes people will try to go, oh well, if I don't do it someone else will, which sure, but that person's also an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
So
like it's not a net positive, like
right.
whatsoever. Oh my gosh, you're so right about that.
Yeah, and it can kind of come, I think, like, so in my view, I'm not like an expert on this, but it feels like greed can kind of either come from this sense of insecurity, right? Where you're like, I don't feel like I have enough, and you've just got to like look out for yourself. Or on the flip side, it can kind of come from like this arrogance or like a lack of consequences, right? When you have so much and you're like, well, why shouldn't I just be a jerk, And it's like,
Right, or do like Nazi salutes at political campaigns because you have so much money that you can get away with it, and then you have people defend you even though it was, it's wild, dude.
right.
Yeah.
And so basically I think it's kind of like, imagine you're playing GTA and like what you do to people when you're just bored and you have all this power and you're like, whatever. And I think there's like this kind of allure of, oh, if I just become independently wealthy, then I can finally be free. But I think that kind of misses the fact that you're probably not good. Like your friends aren't going to come with you because like they're not also going to become independently wealthy.
True.
I mean, there's ways that you can obviously lift up your friends and family, but if you're being greedy, you probably aren't thinking that way, right? Like it's this vicious cycle of choosing power and wealth over meaning and community. And I think that like it's no mystery that greedy people become miserable, and are just generally miserable because there's like this incompleteness that you find, like you keep chasing the power and the wealth, but like why does it matter?
Right.
Right.
It doesn't at the end of the day.
Right.
This is a huge reason I preach community so hardcore in all of the things that I do, is because that's what's going to matter at the end of the day on your deathbed. You can't take your wealth with you.
Yeah, there's
You know?
like I'm not gonna name names, but there's like this one VGM composer who, like, I was in their community, and then one day they just were like, well, we're just gonna make this a paid community, which, like, I don't, you could, whatever, like there's kind of this gray area of like, I guess if you're focusing on, I want to build up like this business of people who, you know, are want to become composers, I guess. But then at the end of the day, it left a sour taste in my mouth to be like,
Yeah.
you're just gonna throw away, like, you're gonna kick out people who aren't paying you, and it's like, I don't know. It's like it kind of leads you in this space of like, well, now I don't really trust that guy anymore.
Literally.
You can argue, well, like his main focus is to like support himself and try to like educate people into this, but it's kind of like a little, you kind of go, well, like you just like decided, I'm just going to shut off this community and gatekeep it for only people who are willing to pay, which is like,
It's kind of like a bait and switch. Like, start it that way from the get-go, you know?
yeah,
Like, because I'm thinking like my Patreon, right? It's like, no, I that's been established from the get-go. You know what you're
right.
into. I'm
It
not
was
gonna,
this
like,
bait and
rug pull
switch.
you after a while. Exactly. Yeah. No, I can't stand that, man. There are certain things that you really need to be careful of, or you'll fall into those traps. And I'm really glad that my journey has taken me the way that it has so far, because I definitely see what to avoid. I've seen what to avoid because I've seen other people do it and literally come across as assholes. And I'm like, never will I ever, you know? Rather than try to sell you products over social media, I am proud to say that this episode of The Quest Within is sponsored by Guild, a nonprofit based in St. Paul, Minnesota, that empowers individuals living with mental illness or experiencing long-term homelessness by helping them lead stable, fulfilling lives in the community of their choice. What I love about Guild is that they tailor all their services to their clients on an individual basis, and everything is super customized. They believe everyone is worthy of the opportunity to create a life with joy, community, safety, and shelter. They offer mental health services that cover everything from case management to intensive residential treatment services, which is an incredible alternative to hospitalization, ultimately reducing homelessness and creating stability for their clients. Through their housing support and evidence-based supportive employment services, Guild truly helps folks along their entire journey towards stability and independence. Their holistic, individually tailored approach has changed thousands of lives over the course of Guild's existence. Guild appreciates my nerdy side too. I met their leadership through my work with 2DCon, Minnesota's largest gaming convention, and they were the first organization of their kind to take my work in the gamer space seriously. All of these reasons are why I approached them to form a partnership, and I'm so glad that they decided to work with me to further make an impact. From here on out, I will be supporting Guild with monthly donations and also contributing 10% of my merch sales to further support their mission. If you are able, please consider either buying some of my merch or supporting Guild directly so they can continue to make an impact on the world. Please check out www.guildservices.org or visit any of my social media in order to find out more. Thank you so much to Guild for sponsoring this episode, for what you do, and without further ado, let's get back to it.
You had pointed out like why meditation and like self-reflection is important, and I think that is an important antidote to greed. Like you need to understand why you're doing what you're doing. Like if you're just chasing like, oh, if I just get the money, like everything comes after. I think it's important to know when enough is enough, right?
Yeah.
And for my own self, like, so I used to work full time, and I was working, and then I just like, I saw downtown covered in wildfire smoke. This was like 2020, and I'm like,
Yeah, dude.
why am I working full time? And I was just like, I mean, again, like part of it, I reached a point where like one of my goals, right, was to have enough money where I could theoretically pay off my student loans. But at the same time now it's like, well, maybe I'll just keep paying the minimum and like what, but I got to this point regardless where I felt like comfortable with, okay, like that was a goal I had at least to get to. And now it's one of the things that I wanted to do was to make more time for music. And so luckily, I work at a place where I could reduce my hours and, have some more space, like basically knowing what my own needs are, like financially I can sustain myself. I'm not putting away nearly as much in savings, whatever. I mean, like, but I'm also getting a lot more time. Like the fact that I can be here recording this podcast right now is a product of that choice.
Right.
So like this is much more important to me than having a couple extra bucks that like, I mean, in a couple years, how much is it really going to be worth? Whatever. Let's not get too doomer with it, I suppose.
Right.
But like, right. Like I think you have to weigh, what do you actually care about? Because otherwise our society is set up in a way to blindly follow this logic of just like it rewards greed. Like the people who are greediest keep going further and further up in the power structure.
Yeah, they do.
It is cutthroat. And like there is just like this trend that is rewarded of just disregarding other people for your own personal wealth. And so if you do not consciously, both for yourself, like reflect on like what do you need, but also surround yourself with a community that gives you meaning to know like what actually matters. It can be easy to fall into that trap.
No, absolutely, dude. Those are such good points, man. On the other podcast that I am a part of, it's called Last Call. It's about the restaurant industry. We actually had a discussion the other day about how I basically, these points were brought up and I was like, some people buy into this lie of where they need so much money in order to be okay, right? And it's like, yeah, to a certain extent you do, right? You do need a certain amount, but there is a threshold where it becomes more about time than money. And I am at a place right now, I'm not rich by any means, but I'm living this weird sort of creator lifestyle where I've realized that time is the true measure of wealth. It's not money. And if you and it's all relative, right? And like, again, I'm not rich at all, but I have set up my life in such a way to where I can live this lifestyle. And I don't think I can go back, man.
Oh yeah, no, it would be so
literally, yeah, I can do whatever I want and it's nuts, dude. But there is, obviously certain issues that come with that. I have to stay super motivated, and I have to be careful that I don't exploit myself, as we talked about earlier, right?
Or at the very least that it's like controlled, right? Like I think at the end of the day, like the way that exploitation is baked into the system, it kind of means that we can't escape it. But I think there's also something to be said for consenting to what level am I willing to be exploited, right? Like when I show up to work, what I do fundamentally, even in a perfect world, would still need to be done. So the question is like, how much time does society need me to actually show up to still also be able to live my own life, right? There should be this balance.
True.
Right.
Yeah, which is again another thing that I preach all the time is having balance. But yeah, no, that's these are such good. So I don't even have anything to say because you said it all there. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we could get into the next topic that I think kind of is like, so piggybacking off of what we were just talking about as far as like, so this question of like power, right? So like I would define power as just like basically the ability to affect your world and make things happen.
Sure.
So like both of us are privileged enough that we have these like jobs, or we're in this situation where we have some level of agency over like, hey, I want to do this thing a certain way. And like, luckily my job has the flexibility to work less than full time. Not everybody gets that. And so like, I think part of the reason that Madarame can exploit these students is because they lack power and they're super vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? Like when people
got the vagabonds off the streets, right? Like that's in the game. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I think that's helpful, right? Yeah. Like it's basically like that's the fundamental, like when people are open to being when they're vulnerable in a way that they can be exploited, like it can lead to bad situations where people kind of like go down these paths where they get further and further like in the grips of just like exploitative people. And I've got an interesting example, and I think like Balatro of all games is a good way to kind of explore how the more difficult that a system becomes to navigate, like the way that you can just find. So, like when you're playing Balatro, I don't know how, whatever. Basically, there's like these different chips, right? So, like when you're first playing the game, you're just kind of like on easy mode, so to speak, where it's just like, you get the cards, you make the plays, and then you just there's not much super complicated stuff going on. But then as you like beat those runs, then you can add, well, okay, now the first blind doesn't give you any cash, and then like eventually you get all the way up to like there's like all these kind of like difficulties that get added onto it, and the last one is like there's jokers that you have to pay rent on. And there's some jokers that you can't get rid of, right? And so like
That's
they're
a wild dynamic.
yeah, and so like when you play those harder modes, you can kind of see how normally the game, like you could maybe get further, right, when you're
Yeah.
playing the normal strategy. But then when you add these like compounding factors that you could make any analogy you want to real life situations. But basically it's kind of like this vicious cycle of if you make one bad choice, the snowball into just being indebted as shit, unable to actually get ahead. Like you basically life is like a game of Balatro, and it started before you ever even were aware of it.
Dude, literally. Oh
Uh
my gosh.
yeah, and so
Or even like a game of Tetris where you start with like a bunch of shit on the screen already. It's like, oh, thanks. Yeah, love that. And, we're very privileged. So I feel like in our lives, we have way less of that.
Right,
Some of us might even had a
totally.
blank slate.
Right.
Whereas other people in life, yeah, one wrong decision. This is why I have so much compassion for homeless people. I used to be like, they're just lazy, like go get a job. And it's like, nah, man, our system is kind of fucked up. And,
Right. right.
one bad thing could happen to you. It couldn't even, like, sometimes it's not even your fault. And then boom, this spiral happens and you're on the streets all of a sudden.
Right.
I don't know. I think that's a really deep systemic failure of the United States government because they are more about profits than people. You know how when you're in like a conversation with like somebody who's like super conservative and essentially like I've made arguments for like, yeah, why can't we do universal health care? Oh, you want the government to do that? It's going to be really bad. But it's like, no, dude, calm down, take a step back. I find that when the government has like, okay, so like with war, the government has a profit incentive. So they're really good at blowing up people,
Uh-huh.
right? If they wanted to, they could do it well. That's the point.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good blanket statement to say that just because the government is involved in something, it's going to be bad.
Right.
But-
And the way that I always put it is the more people that are involved in trying to actually shape the government, the better, because that's like the one place that theoretically is supposed to be a democracy. It's not like you can show up to work, at least unless you have a union or something where you're like, I think we should do things this way, and then you just get fired. But
I guess my point is
right.
to backtrack.
Sure.
If the government really wanted to solve homelessness, they could. But I
Mhm.
don't think they want to because literally you need to drive by that person begging and see that it's so that it incentivizes you to work and to keep running the rat race, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like I hate that about it, but
Yeah,
I do deeply think that's true.
Yeah, I think there's like, right, sometimes the cruelty is the point, and I think this will be interesting conversation for more about like the systems, talking about like how can we change systems. And yeah, basically in terms of like the last point I guess I just have in my notes about power is it's like games are just kind of interesting because you can explore what it's like to be super powerful, like in GTA, where you're just running around being a menace,
Yeah,
which you don't have to do. You can just choose to be a nice person. I played GTA 5 in VR.
That is true.
And I was just driving around and I was like, wow, the whole time, actually, I just chose to be an asshole. You don't actually have to do that if you do, but obviously whatever.
Yeah.
And then Silent Hill 2 is kind of the opposite spectrum, right? Where you get to explore what it's like to not really have much power. You're just kind of like this derpy dude who just has bad controls. Yeah, Silent Hill 2 is just interesting, I think.
I haven't played it.
Any of the Silent Hill games really, like where you're just kind of in this position where you're like not really that powerful, or like there's other games like Smash Bros where like as you learn the whatever. Anyway, I just think that like video games offer us an interesting way to explore power.
Yeah, they do.
That is just one thing I also just kind of wanted to mention in passing.
No, that is super true. I mean, like, yeah, again, I'm bored in GTA. Let's go kill some people randomly or whatever. Like, yeah, you're choosing to be an asshole.
Well, and
I
like,
do love how you put that.
and it's also like, I think that's an important way to look at the way that systems incentivize us, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are pointed by all means in the direction of be an asshole.
Yeah,
like
right,
that is
right.
the point of GTA. So by like putting on a VR headset, playing with a race wheel, and like doing all this modding to like, just explore the city in a way where you don't have to, right? Like that kind of changes the dynamic, which
Yeah,
is
well,
interesting.
Can you actually like do missions where you like help people in GTA? Like,
Well, that's the other thing, right? You could maybe mod that in,
yeah.
but right, like the actual game
altruistic
itself, right. I mean, it'd be kind of funny, right?
That would be really funny, man.
But it kind of just shows you like the way that like systems are designed also influence like how we make those choices.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any more points about power that you wanted to make, but I could get into solidarity.
Yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, solidarity is also an attitude, and it's basically this choice to see common cause with people who are at the same time, they're in the same boat as us, but they're also different, right? Like me and theology here, we both have a love of video game music. We bond over it. Yeah. And so it like brings together this community of people. It kind of like has this foundation where people can just have solidarity over a shared love of video games. And even, it's a little complicated because greedy people can also have solidarity with each other, this kind of like negative, like knowing that their power relies on like this exploitative system. Like sometimes, I mean, right now we're seeing it where there's certain personalities who need each other to kind of like have this shared power, but who are also egomaniacs who can't share power. So it's a little less stable, but
they fight.
Right.
And
but
honestly, it is kind of entertaining to watch.
It's like we all saw this coming.
I know, right?
Yeah. And so I think, right, like I like to focus on the more positive solidarity of like, how do we figure out the balance between our own self-interest and that of like the other people in our lives. And that it should be like this mutually beneficial and respectful relationship. And that can look like friendships. It can be teammates. It could be like,
right.
If you have coworkers that you really like, or if you're in a union, or if you're playing Sonic Heroes and
baby.
you're using the power of friendship to kick ass.
I love that.
It's like you can become more right than just one person.
Well, I mean, I'm constantly saying we can do more united than divided, man, and I will die on that hill, dude.
I mean, that's basically the slogan of solidarity: is we can do more united than divided. And I think it has to be like this conscious choice that you make, because I think, going back to the example of like the argument you got in with this like conservative person about universal health care, where like some folks, have an interest in like the way that things are and like they benefit from it, whatever. Not,
right.
Those
the
people,
status quo, as it were.
Right. Those people who are kind of like in the power structure, well, maybe they're not so much like someone we can work with or persuade, but there's people who, like how Madarame controls the narrative of these students' lives. Like there's this bubble that people live in, and when you talk to normal people about the issues without like triggering these ideological defense mechanisms of like, you know, this worldview that gets created, you can find that there are ways that we have a common interest. And I don't know if I have like a video game example of this, but like,
Hey, it's all good.
yeah, you know, there's like, I mean, basically there's ways that like even, you know, people who don't always necessarily agree on stuff, like there's common ground around like we just want a stable, safe world to live in, or
for
like
sure.
whatever.
Well, I mean, dude, you could make an argument that there is some of that in like Final Fantasy games because
Yeah, if you've got an
arcs and
example, yeah,
sometimes,
please.
yeah, like man, I can't think of like a specific example right off the bat because mine would be from 13 and everybody hates 13.
Yeah.
But you do have competing interests within the party. I guess for example, Lightning, the main character in 13, does not like Snow whatsoever, who is the person that is dating and gets engaged to Sarah, her sister. Yet they do come together as a unit to move things forward in a positive manner for their world, right?
Mhm.
Despite their disagreement. So I don't know, like, yeah, it is possible, man. I find that one thing that really tends to unite us as, I guess, the lower classes is to make that acknowledgement of like, we need to stop looking left and right and we need to start looking up.
Yep.
And we need to unite over the fact that we're all working class. Like I can take any conversation with a really pissed off conservative into that direction.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, we come out of that conversation agreeing on way more. And I'm like, dude, we have so much more in common than divides us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you might see things a little bit differently, but hey, as long as you're not trying to legislate your like weird beliefs into law, I don't really care, you know? Oh, you want guns? Great, cool. Just don't be a dick with them, right? I don't know, man. That's a whole nother debacle, which I do think the United States culture is really sick with guns. I mean, I literally saw a kid get murdered like a month ago.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was
dude.
super crazy. Dude.
Yeah.
I mean, all that aside, yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, we can absolutely find more that unites us than divides us. But to acknowledge that those divides are still there and still get along, I think is very impressive.
Yeah, and it's a process, right? I think
Totally.
another video game example that came to mind while you're talking about that is the way that like in the later Sonic games, you'll find that there's like this powerful force that like even Eggman is like, oh my god, and then like Sonic and Eggman and all the other, like they're like in this kind of weird relationship where like maybe they'll never see eye to eye, but they do have to work together to overcome whatever like supreme evil that's even worse than Eggman.
That's wild.
Or like if you think about like Mario games, similar dynamic where like there's something beyond Bowser and suddenly we're on Bowser's team, and it's like
yeah.
you can probably make your own parallels to the real world.
Oh, for sure, dude. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think regardless, like basically I think solidarity is kind of like an important way. It's an attitude that we can choose to like see common cause. And one point that you had brought up in the book was just like about impermanence, which I think kind of is an important thing to remember as both an antidote to greed, but also like I think it is important for having this solidarity for the future, right? Like we are not here forever. And so
yeah, that's a good point. And impermanence, just so you know, it's this concept in Buddhism that everything is going to change and pass away, nothing is constant. Yeah, so
yeah, and so like what we can do to just set up future generations as best we can with something, you know, knowing that we were once a future generation to someone previous to us, right? And there's like no point in hoarding all of this wealth that just makes you miserable at the end of the day. I mean,
well, like, I would even say that like us being the future generation, we weren't really set up for success by our forefathers. We were not boomers. I mean, I've met some great boomers. Obviously, you can't make blanket statements, but y'all, you really ruined shit for us, man. Like It's wild. And like, I literally look out the window and I feel guilty sometimes because I'm living this life that I'm living and I know so many people are suffering, but whatever. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that like, just because they ruined it for us doesn't mean we have to ruin it for the future generations. And we can do things today and now that set up future generations for success. It's legacy. It's what I wrote in the chapter about Chrono Trigger as well. That, you know, the legacy is something that isn't really, I don't know, focused on that much today because everything is so short attention span. You know, it's short-term profits over people. It's the swipe up TikTok generation, right? Like, we need to start thinking more long-term about things, I think. Pierce and I continued to talk for quite a while, so I'm splitting this up into 2 episodes. So tune in next month as I finish up my conversation with Pierce. Bye-bye for now.
This is the quest within.